Okay, so hopefully by now we know a little bit more about the law of polarity, the law of gender, the conscious and the subconscious mind, and why we need to combine the feminine and masculine aspects of our mind in order to manifest our creations. And now we need to talk about why we should shut up about it. At the beginning of this series, I had talked about the reasons why those who do magic don't talk about magic. One of those being it will screw up the magic. And now I'm going to go over why. The first and probably most important reason we just actually covered. And we talked about how magic is actually a result and process of the mind. And now while you're talking to other people about your magic, you're getting their minds involved in your magic. For better or worse. Typically worse. See, your mind isn't the only mind that has a link to the divine. And your conscious mind isn't the only filter that can block your magic. Especially from those who are ignorant, prejudiced, and fearful of such things. Persecution of the art still exists. Doesn't help things any either when Hollywood's putting out movies such as Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters. Even though a large section of Hollywood and the music industry are they themselves practicing occultists. Often the most active debunkers and persecutors of the occult are the ones who've had the most success with it themselves. Because if everyone could do it, where would that leave them? They're just guarding their own. They don't want the competition. The less people believe in it, the better off they are. Or the more people believe that it's evil, the better off they are. Because they don't talk about it. It's only going to come back to screw up and haunt the ones who do talk about it, who would otherwise be great magicians. Magic isn't evil. Magic is a tool. It's the intent of the operator and magician on whether or not it's evil or good, if you want to put it in terms of polarity. But those in polarity have a hard time seeing that, especially religious polarity. To them, everything is evil. And it wasn't that long ago that even hypnosis was considered evil. Fear and ignorance. Keep other people's minds out of your magic. And even if they're not fearful, but doubtful, and their conscious mind is thinking about your magic and what you're doing, it's going to end up blocking what you're doing. So if you're on Facebook always talking about magic or posting pictures of your temple setup or your tarot cards and things of that nature, you're on the path of the fool. As now you'll have other people's minds, both conscious and subconscious, working against you. And the number of minds involved does matter. Perhaps you'll get some people praying for you, which is a form of magic, aimed at negating your magic. And these mental perceptions that people have of you and your magic from you talking about it are going to last, just as their opinions of you do. They just don't go away in a week or something. Because if you're associated with that, every time they think of you, they're going to think of that. And the next thing you know, they're talking about you and making the problem even worse, spreading it like some kind of magic infection. Oh man, I don't know about her. She's into some pretty weird shit. I heard she was into demon worshiping or something. Now see, society's been trained to associate magic and the occult with demon worshiping and the devil. In hypnosis, we call this triggers and anchors. We trigger something that's been anchored into your mind to associate one thing with another. Now this also happens naturally. For instance, you hear a certain song and it brings up certain emotions and feelings and thoughts of something that happened that was important to you when that song was playing originally, such as reminding you of your ex. The difference being is that in hypnosis and NLP, we set these anchors and trigger them on purpose. Now, we're not going to get too in-depth with that right now, but just know that magic and hypnosis go hand in hand. Self-induction of a hypnotic trance-like state is crucial in bringing your two halves of your mind together. It helps get the conscious mind out of the way as far as it can while still retaining conscious control over what you're doing. Now, personally speaking, I can trigger myself into a trance-like state within seconds. Aside from actually setting up the temple and preparing the rituals, it's actually the very first thing I do when I'm in there, before anything else. It's also why it's important to write things down in your journal immediately afterwards, as soon as possible. Just like a dream, when you're coming out of that, the conscious mind has a hard time holding on to it, and it will start to forget about it real quickly. So self-hypnosis is certainly a key skill to have. In fact, OTO founder Carol Polk Runyon has said that it's one of the 2 key skills that one must have in order to perform magic effectively. So understand that it's not entirely people's fault for associating magic and the occult with evil. It would be your fault for telling them that you're doing magic. They've been trained to associate one with the other. These so-called paranormal investigative shows, as ridiculous as they are, Ghost Adventures. Zach Bagans is really good at casting associations between ritual and evil. Because everything to him, if it's a ritual, it's always evil, demonic, satanic. And you watch that episode with the Hellfire Caves, and at the beginning they say they don't really know what they were doing in the Hellfire Caves. So therefore it must have been some kind of evil, satanic ritual, and they're playing all this background imagery, reenactments of them slaughtering pigs and things like that. It's totally absurd, but to him everything that has to do with ritual is evil, even though they just admitted that they really don't know what the Hellfire Club was doing. And then they pass that on to the public. Ritual equals evil. Ritual equals evil. We don't really know what they were doing down there, but it must have been a ritual of some kind, so they must have been evil. And that's just one example of how these so-called paranormal experts are misleading people. There are many others, but we're going to move on for now. There's some that argue that, oh, well, if everybody's afraid of you, it will enhance your power over them. Well, first off, you shouldn't be worried about having power over them to begin with. You should be worried about your own damn self. And secondly, that can happen, but usually it does not. Do you want to risk that? Aleister Crowley had many, many failures and did not end up well, despite his knowledge. So to me, it's not worth it. Then why am I talking about it? Well, when I'm done recording these lessons, the Frater Xavier persona comes off and I don't associate with it anymore after that. I will not talk about any magical operations that I'm currently in the process of doing or planning to do. I will share things, after the fact, like the sigil I had given you, but I do so in an anonymous fashion. I certainly do not talk about these things with friends and family, nor post them on Facebook. As difficult as that may be, because that brings us to the next reason you don't talk about magic unless you want to screw up your magic. We're all expressive beings. All life is expressive. What goes in has to come out. It has to complete that great electrical circuit. By talking about what you're doing, you're actually diverting that energy from what you're doing. It's like a water hose that has a lot of water pressure built up into it, and you're trying to hit the guy on the other side of the yard with the jet spray. But if the hose has a leak in it, you're not going to get that pressure. Everything's dribbling out. You're not going to have enough force to get across the yard. The spray is just going to dwindle. And yet we're all expressive beings. What goes in has to come out. But we keep silent so that what does come out is focused on our magic and our goals instead of all over the place. Now, perhaps you enjoy dressing goth and wearing pentagrams as an expression of who you are. But the best magicians are the ones who blend in with society. It's those expressions that are going to come back and hinder you for the very reasons that we've been talking about. These expressions are very loud announcements of who you are, what you like, and what you're doing, which are accompanied by stereotypes and very fixed mindsets. One famous occult author, who I'm not going to name because he has a kind of a just do it attitude on things, and he's in a lot of really dark stuff, and I don't want people going off and getting themselves into trouble. But he's been known to say that people would come up to him at book signings and stuff and comment in surprise on just how normal he dresses, acts, and looks, and talks. But yeah, silence is one of those things where almost every book on magic gets it right. To know, to dare, to will, and to be silent. I said before that silence was a form of depolarization. The way you dress is part of that. That author and all magicians who blend in are practicing depolarization. They're not at one extreme or the other. Those who do dress up like warlocks and wear the pentagrams or dress goth, heavy metal, bikers even, it doesn't matter, any clique like that. It has nothing to do with rebellion and everything to do with conformity, to gain validation and acceptance by those of like mind. So if you dress extreme, not only are you going to hinder your magic, but you're placing a huge Saturn limitation on yourself. Saturn always favors tradition and penalizes rebellion. The chick with the pink mohawk, nose ring, and the face tattoo is going to have a lot more limiting and restrictive options in life than somebody who just dresses normally. And yes, I do actually know people like this. And they sit around and they complain how life isn't fair because everybody's judging them by the way they look. Well, that is a self-limiting thing that they put upon themselves. That was a choice that they made. They restricted their own options. And for what? To be accepted and validated by people who are just as restricted and limited as they are? Now, that's just who I am. Well, you can be yourself without restricting and limiting yourself at the same time. You can do that. I understand the need for expression, probably better than most. What goes in has to come out, and what goes out eventually will return to you. Redirect and focus your expression into your magic. See, the conscious mind is always wanting to project and express everything. And this is why people project things onto others and onto the divine and onto anything other than themselves. The chick I know with the pink mohawk and the face tattoo posted yesterday on Facebook, she got fired. Again, it's not her fault. No, it's the other people's fault. See, they got her fired. Again, can't be her. It's just another social injustice. We should be taking the conscious projections and focusing them into our will to make things happen for us instead of against us. Chances are people already think you're a bit weird, and you want to throw magic on top of that. To know, to dare, to will, and be silent. I hope this has helped you understand a little more why silence is so important in magic. See you next time.